we invited COP delegates from 12 countries to share their insights and discuss with us. But firstly, I would like to introduce Impactopia. Impactopia is an all-in-one philanthropy and impact platform combined with blockchain to empower impact makers by offering user-friendly and time-saving donation experience. Today, you can donate to more than 1.2 million NPOs through our platform, transparently and efficiently. We also aim to build exclusive, high-quality social community. So today, you can donate to more than 1.2 million NPOs through our platform, transparently and efficiently. We can also build exclusive, high-quality social community and create a sense of belonging and impact culture by connecting impact makers, NPOs, foundations, even governments together with same social cause. So on Impactopia, nonprofit organizations, impact makers, donors, volunteers, companies are all welcome to join us to collect donations, follow the progress of NPO projects, and discuss the direction of sustainable development. You can scan the QR code to join the community. Yeah, so the QR code is on the next page. Yeah. Since $420 million made on the first day of COP28 to finance the Loss and Damage Fund, which is intended to assist communities in developing countries suffering from natural disasters and other harms caused by global warming. So we realize that climate adaptation is one of the most crucial parts we need to target. So our first panel would be on climate adaptation. So welcome our two panelists, Ibiso Ikiruma Oweyi, who is the Climate Austria Global South Delegate and Chairperson of Commonwealth Ocean Youth Working Group, and the group, who is the youth mobilization from Nigeria. Yeah, welcome you too. Please also introduce yourself and share with us your story with your organizations on social impact, and also what brought you to the COP.
All right. So my name is Ibiso Ikrumowe from Nigeria, and I'm the Climate Austria Global South Youth Delegate. And I'm also the chairperson of the Commonwealth Ocean Youth Working Group under the Commonwealth Youth Climate Change Network and the Commonwealth Blue Charter. I also own an organization in Nigeria, which is the Grassroots to Global Sustainable Development Network. And I'm pleased to be at this meeting to share my insights on COP28 with everyone. Thank you.
Introduce yourself.
Let me try. Okay. Hi, everyone. I am Teresa Tunulopebiro from Nigeria, and I attended COP as an African youth mobilization for COP delegate. So it's like a campaign under, Youngo generally. And generally, my work revolves around, I would say, policy recommendation as well as project implementation, around different SDGs. Thanks.
Okay, sure. So glad to have you here. So please also share some of your, experience during the COP. Yeah. Is there any other, if you have any other insights, yeah, so please share with us.
Advocating for frontline communities in Nigeria who actually are most impacted by the climate change crisis, because I work directly with these frontline communities. And so my advocacy work was basically amplifying their challenges and their stories, and looking forward to how the loss and damage funds can actually be um, the draft can actually be signed and agreed upon, which it was, and then how these funds can now be disbursed to implement projects, meaningful projects for those communities who are most affected by the loss and damage, caused by climate change crisis. Also, part of the things that we did at COP was actually work with the Commonwealth, because the Ocean Youth Working Group was launched at the COP, better to say, at the Commonwealth Pavilion, and so I basically did some conversation and panel sessions there, with the Commonwealth Secretary General who actually launched the working group, and we actually did call upon youths around the Commonwealth countries to be a part of the activities we will be having coming up in 2024. For the Ocean Youth Working Group, just to mention a few, we'll be having the Ocean Conference and Hackathon. We'll also be having the essay competition and, of course, the photography challenge for young people to tell stories across their different continents and their different countries on the ocean challenges they face. That was a bit of what I did, so I don't say so much. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's your turn to Tolu. Yeah, please share your story. Yeah, during the COP.
All right, so at COP28, I was following through with negotiations, around loss and damage, and also around phasing out fossil fuel. Then my organization had a couple of side events around energy transitions and then green skills, as well as EU partnership. What's the relationship, or what's the synergy of the relationship between the African Union, the European Union, and how youth play a really technical role, as well as empowering young people with green skills and necessary funding in Africa. So that was basically like an overview of engagement and participation at COP.
Okay, cool. So since it's a climate adaptation panel, so how about share with us, some of your insights on climate adaptation? For example, how Nigeria react for this kind of policies or the loss and damage funds. Yeah.
All right, thank
you. You can go
I
ahead.
think for loss and damage, it's a little bit dynamic because since COP26 in UK, they have been making pledges about their contributions to loss and damage funding. And I think with COP, that's COP26 right here. 28, we now see one more countries that can pledges. I think what the countries actually pay up. That's one. Then two, I would say creating a framework so that countries do not make pledges that are below the emissions that they make. So making a pledge is not enough if you're not making a pledge that is commensurate to how much it costs for countries in the global south. That's another one. And then the third one would definitely be accountability. Accountability is very, very important because we have people come and they keep making plans and see how this funding is actually properly disbursed, especially to rural communities are most affected of loss and damage. Then it becomes a problem. What's happening with the money and how and why is it not disbursed? That would be my take on the question.
Cool, fantastic. So with Tolu, I have another questions. Yeah, since the US only committed, $17 million, compared to other countries, for example, France or the UAE, Germany already committed more than this. Since the US only committed $17 million to the fund, while recently passed, maybe more for the defense budget. So what do you make of this? Many of Western governments are heavily indebted. For example, $30 trillion for the US, for example, while top 1% of world elites holds more than $43 trillion in wealth. Do you think we should encourage the elites contribute more? If yes, how? How can we do that?
Right, so I definitely think we should contribute. We should encourage the elites to contribute more, and I think that's in accountability and creating a framework, right? Because at COP26, countries made pledges. At COP27, countries made pledges. At COP28, countries are still making pledges. So it's a framework of how do we actually measure the damage that these countries have created, and then how do we build them on an actual polluter pay principle. So what happens is every year, for instance, with a framework, we can say this year this country has this amount left. So if they pledge maybe 60 billion in COP 28. At COP29, you can pledge them and say, oh, you still have maybe 700 billion left to pledge. And then at COP29, you can say, oh, we want to pledge another 60 billion to add to the 60 billion we pledged at COP28. So that means in total, one country has pledged 120 billion. So it becomes an accountability of how do we ensure that within the next COP, they end up paying the money, and then there is proper transparency. So we say, oh yeah, this country has paid the money. How many countries are actually in the global south? How many countries in the global south are affected? How are these countries or communities affected? Because these countries are not affected in a linear manner. Everybody is affected in a disproportional way. So if you're going to say you want to send money to Nigeria, for instance, the same amount of money you send to Nigeria is not the same amount of money you're going to send to Ghana, or you're going to send to Togo, or you're going to send to a small island state, because the population and then the impact of loss and damage is different. But if we don't have a framework to properly measure these things, then we would end up having money and end up sending money, but we would not send it to those that need the money the most, and there would be no accountability. So the US can come at COP31, for instance, or COP30, for instance, and then they tell you, oh, we already made a pledge, but they are not actually paying up commensurate to what they are actually emitting. So I think more than saying, oh, people should pay, countries should pay more, elites in countries and governments in countries should sit down and actually bring more money to the table at these conferences. We need to have a solid framework that runs from top to bottom. How are we collecting the money? How are we measuring the impact of the money? How do we ensure it gets to the right countries, the right communities, and to the actually affected people? What's the monitoring and evaluation framework for these things? So I think it's an entire holistic framework that we need. And right now, I don't see it as something that we have.
Fantastic for your, really appreciate your reply, yeah, and your insights. So do you think, the fund should be distributed? How can we, realize the fund, the fair distribution of the fund, for the loss and damage fund?
All right. So I think one major way why we are still, trying to hold government accountable to create a framework is to say, how do we bring relevant stakeholders together, right? We can't just say, oh, we are giving the money to World Bank, because World Bank is an organization of its own, and then World Bank has its own goals. So it means if World Bank wants to focus on agriculture, for instance, it means countries that are not facing severe loss and damage in agriculture would not be able to access that fund because it doesn't fit into the thematic area that they are affected by. So we need to say, how do we ensure we get this money to the right people? And I think one major way is through partnerships and collaboration, by saying, how do we ensure that government of countries, which is the public sector, comes together? How do we ensure that we have the private sector coming together? And then how do we ensure that we get the civil societies and NGOs together? So we need to have a roundtable and bring all three major stakeholders together. And even though we are going to, disburse the money in a grant, for instance, we can say, oh, we are disbursing 40 billion, for instance, and then we're saying what percentage of the 40 billion is going to the public sector, what percentage is going to the private sector, what percentage is going to the local communities, and then how do we create a framework to hold these people accountable? How many government agencies in the public sector are going to get this money? How many government agencies in the private sector are going to get this money? How many agencies in the CSOs and communities are going to get this money? What is the time frame for them to execute the project? What is the call for application time frame? How many people actually applied? How many people were successful? From the first tranche of the grant that has been given out, what has been implemented in the actual local communities? And then if the initiative from the first grant has not been, properly implemented, then I don't see why organizations or even the regulatory body in charge of this funding should go further to say, oh, we're giving out the second tranche of the grant. So I think there's a whole lot of planning, and then I would say monitoring and evaluation framework that needs to be created, because this is not a problem that we have tried to solve before in this way, where climate change has been a problem. But the issue around funding, financing, and actually disbursing the funds is not something that we say, oh, we have a framework for. So if we don't actually take the time to create the framework before we start giving out the money, then there would be a problem. And I think the goal always is to hold the government accountable, hold the COP and relevant parties and stakeholders accountable to ensure that this money is not just on paper, it's not just on news, but actually gets to people that are most vulnerable and need this funding.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we need to move forward, I mean, to create the framework, like you said, and maybe we can look forward to the next COP. Maybe we can get more things done. Since, I mean, female empowerment is one of the most crucial parts as well for us. So our next panel, our second panel would be on equality. So let's firstly introduce our two moderators, our two panelists. Yeah. Mary Cynthia Lapamirisor, who is the youth officer within the project Maharo, financed by USAID from Madagascar, and Dipisha Bujel, who is the co-founder and the chairwoman of SPARSA from Nepal. Yeah, welcome. Please introduce yourself, Mary and Dipisha, one by one. Yeah, tell us about your story and what have you been done, what have you been doing, I mean, during the COP and even now, yeah, on social impact.
And good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mary Lapamiachu. I'm from Madagascar. I'm the president of the Salambe Initiative. It means Women Initiative Organization. We work to promote gender equality and climate justice. And the COP28, it's my first COP. I represented the voice of youth, and as for me, this COP was an enriching experience. Indeed, it allowed me to represent my country and my Malagasy youth. One of my objectives for this COP was to try to have the maximum amount of funding and partnership to come Madagascar to support our initiative. And I find therefore it was an experience that brought me a lot of, because I had the opportunity to meet and inspiring individual, this case of collaboration, and discover new best practices. Thank you.
Thank you. And Nipisha, yeah, Dipisha, please.
Hi, hello everyone. So it's me, Tipisa from Nepal, and I work for an organization called NIDIZI. So it's a German Nepali organization working on different social business projects in Nepal that works on different environmental and social issues. So as part of NIDIZI, I recently co-founded a non-profit company in Nepal named Spursa, where we aim to produce and manufacture compostable pad made out of banana fiber. So yeah, in Nepal there is a big problem of period poverty, where more than like 80% of menstruators do not have access to hygienic period product, and we also have a tradition of stigmatization and tabooing like women who are menstruating. So we have a lot of tradition that isolate women's participation in social and political spaces just because of our period. So to tackle like both of them, we wanted to have a sustainable approach. So that's why we founded this company. And yeah, we work a lot around social like climate justice and gender equality. So that's what I do in Nepal. And yeah, as Mari said, that it was also my first COP at COP28. And for me, like, I'm a strong advocate of climate justice and gender equality. So yeah, I took a lot of opportunities to also speak and to meet like other activists and yeah, people and leaders who are working on climate justice. And I was also following negotiations that surrounds like that that was around just transition and all of that. So it was a big opportunity for me to say that, to be in that global platform where people from so many countries came and yeah, we all like, especially young people, were advocating for climate change. So yeah, I think I learned a lot, and yeah, it was a big opportunity for me to also see how really like this kind of conference works, especially the negotiation part. Even though I was like quite disappointed about the overall outcome, but I think at the end what really matters to me is that I learned a lot, and I'm still hopeful that in the future the COP will be more like beneficial, especially for countries like Nepal who are very vulnerable to climate change. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome, awesome. Do you have some insights on equality which are realized, I mean, during the COP? Yeah, do you have some feelings about, I mean, a well-achieved equality during the COP?
Affecting women and girls in terms of education, health, and the local local economy. Um, During this COP, I said this later. I follow the different negotiation about gender equality and justice climatic because imagine being a young Malagasy girl at school when a cyclone squash infrastructure and are devastated by winds and hurricanes, water crisis, sorry, forcing you to go home. Will young men might run faster or seek refuge in less flooded areas? You perceive the risk and vulnerability of girls. That's the reason why I follow the this negotiation and the different citizens during the COP to bring the voice and to to discuss with the different partners about this problem in Madagascar. And after that, in Madagascar, girls dropping out of school persist as to forced marriage led to climate change. Um, recently, a young girl was taken out of school for a forced marriage due to the need for money and food at home, considering the serious consequences for this girl, both physically and psychologically. So I think that's if I respond these questions.
Okay, so Deepisha, do you have something to share?
Yeah, of course. So, like, I'm just reading out a quote by like that I learned through COP28, which says that by mid-century, climate change could push like up to 158 more women and girls into poverty globally. This is 16 million more than the total number of men and boys. That's why it's also very urgent that we work more on equality, and yeah, that more women and not only women but also like from minorities group are included on like that their voices are included in like spaces like COP28. And one of the biggest highlight for me during the COP28 was the launch of COP28 Gender Responsive Just Transition and Climate Action Partnership Fund that promotes women's and girls full equal and meaningful participation and leadership. And it also acknowledges a role in just transition regarding women and girls participation in just transition. So it was the biggest highlight for me because it was endorsed by over 60 parties, including the UK, US, and Germany, France. So like even though they like so many like big countries have placed for this partnership, I'm still like doubtful about its implementation because it's not clear about how much of the finance there is going to be in this fund. And also like when what are the clear frameworks that will make the implementation possible. But it is said that in COP31 they would review it, and that but I think it is still for me the biggest win that they launched this partnership, and that they are really acknowledging that okay, without women's and girls participation in climate action, there is no that there is no real work on just transition. So yeah, that was a main highlight for me.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. So I have several questions for you too. The first one would be, according to UN Women and Rizin Khalifa Al Mubarak at COP28, the climate change is not a gender neutral issue. The effects of climate change are most felt by women and girls, who also face particular risk to their safety, health, and livelihoods. The absence of data and information broken down by gender, which creates a gap between how climate change affects men compared to women, is also a problem. So, what can we do to address gender inequality within climate change? Yeah. So, Marie, please.
Big problem about um, the the government and the different people, no considering the participation, the human and the girl at the discussion in the communities. So as for me, it's crucial to promote awareness and education related to gender and climate change, whether at school or through safe space like this. Additional advocates for the collection on the, of gender disparity data is necessary to better understand specific impacts of men and women and guiding policies incredibly. And I find more supporting women's entrepreneurial initiative leads to climate resilience by providing access to microfinance and credit is essential. I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. So Deepisha, yeah, please.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And as Mari already said, that we need more investment and more support to women entrepreneurs. And yeah, my opinion is also the same. And I think the biggest motivator for that is finance, funding that um like such big platforms, or the framework should really focus on how to implement those funding and finance the region and the people who are in most who need it the most. And also more investment in women's economic development, or to say empowerment, and to making sure that no one is left behind. And I like I'm also since I come from an indigenous community in Nepal, and I know that indigenous communities most of the time have a solution, uh, you know, uh, for climate change, because they have been nature is basically their home. And but in reality, we indigenous people are not much receiving funds and those finances and support. So I think it's high time that more indigenous people, especially women and girls, are are given more opportunities and are given funds and finance, and also given decision making access to decision making platforms, so that we can we can work more on those issues. Because without not including indigenous people, especially women and girls, I don't see that we can really do much on climate action. So for me, the finance and funding part is the most, and to making sure that no one is really left behind, especially women and girls. and and that again from more from indigenous communities. So yeah, that's it for me.
Really appreciate you two's, I mean, insightful ideas, yeah, and sharing. Yeah. So the stage will be the our next moderator and two panelists. Yeah. Stage is yours.
Hi everyone. So this panel is actually the panel for energy transition, and then following it would be the one for water systems. But we would be having a panel session for energy transition. Hope everyone can hear me.
Let's turn to the next panel. Yeah.
Yeah. So to join me on this panel session would be for the energy transition would be James Ladbrook, who is already here. He is the renewable energy consultant. He's a renewable energy consultant and a COP28 Australian and KPMG delegate. And also on this panel will be Dr. Amon Nkoga, who is the chairman, Clean Cooking Association of Tanzania. So welcome, James. Welcome, Dr. Amon. Please, could you unmute and introduce yourself, James? And right after you would be Dr. Amon. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Piso. Good afternoon, morning, everybody. My name is James. As Piso said, I work in Sydney, Australia, as a renewable energy consultant for KPMG, and I went to COP as a representative of the Emerging Climate Leaders Program in Australia. So I was lucky enough to be an Australian and KPMG delegate. And, I had a great 2 weeks. And just because my profession was in renewable energy, I thought that that's what I would be focusing on as my takeaway. But honestly, what I really learned and my call to action for COP is that the climate transition won't actually happen at the speed of technology, the speed of funding or construction.
Could you please unmute?
Hello.
Yes, perfect. We can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Amon Mkoga from Clean Cooking Association of Tanzania. I participated, of course, COP28 Dubai, UAE, in order to learn more about other countries, what they are doing, especially in the clean cooking. You know, in Tanzania, we have a project for clean cooking, which we launched, African Woman Clean Cooking Support Program. This, of course, will be a program which will be funded by AFDB, and the other stakeholders. And the good thing, of course, our President, Mama Samia Suluhu, of course, she's a chairman of this African Woman for the Clean Cooking Support Program. So I'm very, very, of course, happy, of course, when I participated in the COP28. I learned, of course, other stakeholders, what they are doing, especially in the COP. And I had, of course, the time to participate, to network with different stakeholders in how they're implementing, of course, the clean cooking in their countries.
All right.
Yeah.
Coal, which is not considered fossil fuel for renewable energy. So we know the misconception about if wood and charcoal is actually a fossil fuel product and all of that. So what can be the drawback of an orderly transition? And do you think people would go back to burning wood and charcoal?
I think what we need, of course, I think for the especially in our countries, of course, in Africa, and then you said, of course, that for there are a lot of people that are cooking by using charcoal and wood. But what we are doing right now, even that program which launched during, of course, the COP28 is a BCC. We need, of course, the behavior change communication. And the other thing, of course, which, of course, a lot of especially women, they said is about the expenses of LPG gas. That's the major issue. So, of course, in Tanzania, we have, of course, one company known as Copper Gas. I think you can buy, of course, the gas. Of course, it depends with the money which you have, of course, in your pocket. So, of course, you can buy a gas. So of course, I think it's the first thing we are doing, of course, the behavior change communication, the awareness, and other thing to try, of course, to empower for the woman, because of course, for example, of course, your country, of course, before the COP28, we disputed, of course, almost 300, of course, gas cylinder to the woman entrepreneurs in different, of course, region, including Kagera region, Tanzania. But they said that, of course, how they can refill for the gas when the gas was finished. So also, we should, of course, empower them. If they have, of course, the incoming generation, so I think they'll be able even to proceed to buy for the gas when it's finished.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Amon. James, do you have something to say on that question before I ask you yours?
No, I think that was good. Good answer.
Okay, great. So over to you, James. In the light of the COP president's comments about the lack of science for a phase down of fossil fuels and the continuation of many countries, building out their fossil fuel assets, is it in fact politics that the biggest challenge is? Is it that the biggest challenge in this transition is actually politics as compared to innovation or funding? And what would you say, in your opinion, is the common challenge when it comes to fossil fuel phase down or phase out? Thank you.
I think that politics is one of the big challenges. Probably not like the only and biggest challenge, but also for answer my opinions expressed on my own opinions, not my company's opinions. So I think the policy decisions made by various governments worldwide to like phase out, or now from the GST phase down or abate fossil fuels in the next 5 to 25 years, clearly do impact the achievement of the transition. But this is not like a one size fits all scenario, as we say in Australia. Some countries are further ahead on the journey and accelerating, and then others have made the commitment but are only just getting underway. So I guess I'll speak for Australia. In Australia, the federal government has committed to net zero emissions by 2050, like most other countries. But their main commitment is a 43% reduction below 2005 levels by 2030, which is very random, but that's what we've committed to. We have a lot of state targets, and we have a federal capacity investment scheme, which encourages and funds new investment into renewable energy. So these are kind of like the policies and the targets, like the politics, you could say, around the transition in Australia. What we've actually seen is that coal power plants have been slowly decommissioning. And so this trend has been accelerating, and some forecasted scenarios have predicted all coal power plants to be retired by 2030, although we'll see like how that goes. It might be a bit later than that. So yeah, like Australia is accelerating on a course to net zero by 2050 with some key milestones at 2030. Except I guess it's to see whether the policies in place in Australia and the rest of the world is going to be the main challenge or the main opportunity. But either way, it definitely is it does provide one of the main challenges and opportunities for businesses in the coming years. Thanks.
Thank you so much, James. Thank you for your insight. I think I would move over to Dr. Amon. I think this question he can answer. The president of the African Development Bank Group has reiterated his warning that the introduction of a carbon border tax by the EU, that's the European Union, could push Africa back into exporting her raw commodities and undermine her industrialization gains. So how do we make the energy transition in a just manner, given technology disparity between developed countries and developing countries?
Okay, I think what we need, I think the sharing of idea and to be of course to work together. I think the partnership is the PPP partnership is a major thing of course which can assist us to work together. Something which I learned of course we have of course a different vision and the mission of course in different countries and the institution. I think if we can sit together and we can know of course what we want to implement together, this will be helpful for us.
All right. Thank you,
Yeah,
Dr.
yes.
Amon. I think I would also want to hear your opinion, James, concerning the disparity that could happen between developed countries and developing countries, and how to make the transition in a just manner.
Yeah, I think that in terms of the just transition, like we talk about it a lot in Australia, but we don't understand it. It's like KPMG releases a lot of reports on the just transition, and we have teams working on the just transition, but I don't really like feel confident speaking on like my own opinion, because I really believe that in Australia we don't understand about what a just transition is. So I'm very interested in it personally, and I do agree with you that there is a disparity between developing and developed nations. So all I would say is just listen to the people that are actually experiencing these issues, and yeah, that's all I really have to say. I don't think any like opinions of my own would really like help, just because I really don't have the knowledge and the learnings and the experience and the understanding.
All right. Thank you all so much. Thank you, James. Thank you, Dr. Amon, for for your insights into the question on energy transition. And
Thank you.
thank you for being on this
Thanks,
panel
Lisa.
with us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So
Thank you, madam.
we'll move over to the next panel, which is on water systems shortly. And to be on this panel session, we have Silas David, who is a marine scientist and the founder of SOA Tanzania, also the coordinator, Marine Conservation Warden. And I think we also have Hank Ovink, who is the senior fellow and commissioner on water ambassador, sorry to say. So do we have the Elias here? Yes, I can see Elias. Don't know if we have Dr. Hank. Okay, so we have Elias David, and so kindly introduce yourself, Elias David, and please share some insights on your COP28 experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'm really happy to be here. So my name is Alice David, and I was at COP28. My really ambition and mission was to make a follow-up on natural-based solutions, making follow-up on how our ocean can play part in solving climate change, and how marine protected areas can also play part in fighting climate change, and what are the commitments of our world leaders, stakeholders, and governments in supporting ocean-based solutions in solving the issue of climate change.
All right, thank you, Elias. So just to move on quickly, because I think we're running out of time, I want to ask the question on, at some side events at COP28, blue carbon and its trading was a very hot topic. I sat on one of those panel sessions where they talked about blue carbon and its trading, and it stirred up a lot of interest in the hearts of people, to want to know more about blue carbon and the likes of it. So, as a marine scientist, in the light of this emerging development of blue carbon, what's your take on, blue carbon, the topic blue carbon, and what are some undeniable challenges of the blue carbon trading system? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the nice question. So the topic of blue carbon was one of the hottest topic in COP28, as you have said. We have seen quite a very large investment in blue carbon ecosystem conservation and restorations. We have seen Coral Breakthrough, the launch of Coral Breakthrough, which gave rise to financing more than 100 million USD in coral reef restoration projects. And also there was a launch of Mangrove Breakthrough, which also it was created a pipeline of financing mangrove restoration worldwide. and also more than 100 million USD was raised from different governments and stakeholders. And the government of UAE also committed to plant more than 100 mangrove by 2030. And we also saw companies and private sectors committing to plant mangroves in different areas of the world. So they created a global mangrove alliance as a platform where the whole pipeline of the mangrove breakthrough, they are the ones responsible to make sure that the pipeline is well financed and projects are within the pipeline. So the question was on carbon trading, because the carbon trading market is very promising and every year is piling up, is going high, but nothing yet is more, it's not yet very transparent on the how do we measure the standards, and even the standardification processes is not as straightforward. Everyone is trying to learn throughout the process, throughout the journey, although it's really a very promising journey. So there were a lot of discussion on blue carbon, and we all came to agreement that blue carbon is very important to our ecosystem, and it's very important to also acknowledge the importance of carbon credit markets. All what is needed is for everyone to play a role and make sure the carbon credit market is very open and transparent. Like we know the standardifications for carbon credits, we know who are the buyers, and everything is transparent so that it does not be seen as a greenwashing for most of the companies. And also for the projects, they need to follow these standards, and someone has to really make sure that these are the good projects which generate a good amount of carbon credits. So that was really, to me, yeah, it was really an interesting topic to me, and I was really inspired to see governments, private sectors, and everyone coming forward to really show the role of blue carbon ecosystems and the carbon credit market, because that also finance restoration projects on the ground, which are ongoing, and also benefits the low coastal communities who depends on these blue carbon ecosystems.
Yeah, so just a follow-up question. So I said, following your statement, I'm saying the blue carbon trading system, do you think is another political, emerging political stuff, or do you think it's something that these countries are willing to work by? When you talk about the mangrove restoration and even the coral reef restoration, that they are making pledges to.
Oh, so if I got it correctly, is about the political will on this blue carbon project.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I can speak for an example in my country, Tanzania. The blue carbon projects have been well received by the government. Sorry.
Has it locked up?
So yeah, sorry for that. Okay, so I can say there is a political will from different governments on carbon credit markets, and there are others who are not yet receiving the idea, because it's not, as I said before, it's not that much transparent and open, but every day now and then the issue becomes very understood by most of the players on the ground. For instance, in my country, Tanzania has developed a body which is run by the government, which is known as National Carbon Monitoring Center, which is authorized by the government to register carbon credit projects which are running within Tanzania, and to monitor the number of carbon which are being generated within the Tanzania, and to understand who is buying those carbon credits, because also that has been a question to most of the carbon buyers. Like the market is like, there is a double counting in the market. Like the country is trying to meet its national determining contributions, the NDCs, and tries to account for all the credits which are being generated within the country. And there are companies and buyers from outside the countries who are also trying to buy credits from different other countries. So there was a bit of that, but governments are starting to understand and are starting to creates regulations and policies and laws which are guiding carbon credit market within in the national level before going to the international level. So Tanzania is one of the countries which has managed to develop its own regulations and policies which are guiding the carbon credit market and regulations. And now we have already seen some different projects which have already been registered by the government and are already creating impacts on the ground. So I can say on the politically, there are a lot of discussions, but there is a positive takeaway from all this. The government is starting to understand how carbon credit market is very important and how it can really help to finance climate change mitigation by restoring not only in the blue carbon, even in the agroforest. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. And this is the last question for you. On the issues of water systems, how do we scale the access and efficient use of water and the finance and investment for water availability and management, especially for local communities in desert areas or desert encroaching areas? Did you get the question, Elias?
Yes, I got the question. So
Okay.
my point is, first we need to have a really water plan, because if we don't protect the water sources, we don't educate people on how to manage the water sources, we cannot get an access to quality water from the community level, from the industrial level, because even I can also see even from my country, there are some of the industries which are just discharging their effluents, their wastes to the water sources. So I think we need a very strong coming together between the local coastal communities, the government, and the policies, and the bodies which are authorized on environmental issues to really make sure that we protect the sources, the water sources, the rivers, and every water source that exists from pollutions, and we protect it to make sure that we have a quality water, because without protecting the water sources, we cannot get an access to a very quality water. We also need innovations and financing for helping these water sources, because there are many different ways we can get water, not only from river sources and channels. People can even create water from fog, from moisture. There are a lot of technologies which we can help us get access to quality water, and not only depending on rain, because climate change has already affected us. Rainfall season have changed. So we cannot just wait for the rainfall season. We need some innovations which can help us get an access to water, quality water for our own use. And that by saying innovation, we also need financing to finance those kind of innovations. Innovations not only which enable access to water, but also create presence of water. I can say like innovations which purify water, which like a water circulation system, which can purify the water and be reused again. So we need also all that also on the table. So we need those innovations. We need financing to help those innovations take actions. We need to make sure that the policies, people understand, the industries understand the value of water so that they cannot pollute, and everyone understands. We need to raise awareness on the importance of water, how we can use it and manage it and not pollute it. Thank you.
Thank you, Elias. Thank you so much for your insights. Just to share, to highlight so many that we talked about water purification and people understanding the water sources, and so they can be able to manage it and comes to the blue carbon trading system. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and helping us understand better what Tanzania is doing and how other countries can also key into that system as well. So thank you for being on this panel today, and that's all for now for the panel on energy transitions and water systems. So I will turn the mic to the next panel on agriculture and biodiversity. My name is Ibiso. Thank you so much.
Hello. I think we're taking over youth first, and then we're gonna talk about agriculture and biodiversity. But welcome everybody. Thank you very much. I just want to open the panel on why are we talking about youth. This is the first time that COP has talked about youth. There's no doubt that younger generations and kids face a greater threat from the negative effects of climate change. Yet they're often left out of the decision making when it comes to policies that affect their present and their future. And as I said before, this is the groundbreaking move of COP is that they included these young generations in COP, and Vinka and Saiket were there. So thank you guys for being here. We wanna listen. Us, at least me, as being part of I consider myself part of the youth generation. I want to hear you so much. Vinka is a climate analyst and the APAC lead for the Migration, Youth and Children platform. And Saiket took part as delegate for YOUNGO, International Young Nuclear Congress and Nuclear for Congress. Thank you again so much for being here. With no further ado, please give us a small introduction of what you did, who were you, and what did you do in COP28, please.
Vinka, please go ahead, and then I'll take the platform.
Yes, of course. Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Vinka. I'm half Indonesian Portuguese, but I grew up in Australia. I didn't start a migration policy, but I've been in the space for about 2 years now. What we do is that we kind of facilitate this platform for young people to engage in migration policy processes. So we link them up with UNICEF, IOM, but specifically in my role as APAC, we do a lot of like co-directing policy briefs for Australian government, with IOM, APAC as well. And recently, Australia last year, they had a climate change bill. And this year they're looking to climate change bill amendment to integrate young people's voices when renewing oil and gas licenses. So what APAC's doing at the moment specifically, we're looking into how this can be expanded into climate litigation. So just in case the governments violate this right through the grant to young people, how can young people take governments to court? And at COP, I was closely following the global stocktake and looking into the global goals adaptation as well, but mostly looking how they integrate, I guess, migration clauses into the GSD. And also following loss and damage fund.
Hi everyone, my name is Saikat Das. Thanks Vinka and thanks Imanol for the amazing guys. I generally work as a project engineer for offshore wind farms in UK as a full-time, but also engaged in the YOUNGO Energy Working Group as a governance coordinator. We all do a lot of work in terms of policy inclusions from the youth, in terms of energies, not just energies, also like the renewables and the energy mix. We also cover the work streams of UNFCCC to advocate for sustainable and secure and equitable energy systems, principally through the COP and the COI. We primarily follow mitigation track, GSTs. We also put forward the demand for a negotiation track for energy, like a dedicated one. But we also involved closely with the work streams, including technological mechanism, finance mechanism, Article 6, of course, the broader multilateral government, non-profit, private sector partnerships, and youth advocacies with SDG 7. In COP this year, I followed a lot of side events, major events like bilaterals. What we have with the direct presidencies. We have a lot of direct communication and events for different bilateral, meetings with the non-governmental panels, NGOs, for how we can track towards green transition, youth inclusion. Of course, I also indulged in nuclear for climate, where we gave a lot of awareness and education towards how nuclear can be run through in a safeguard manner towards many innovated SMRs like the small medium reactors and innovated reactors for stable grid to keep the baseload alive. So there was a lot going on in COP. But yeah, we try to keep on track with each and every CMAs, which is the minutes of meeting to the parties for the Paris Agreement, and hopefully we did it. But of course, there was a lot of unagreed text on the table, which we all are disappointed of. But at least this time, 2050 was targeted as a boundary, and they all agreed that 1.5 has to be kept alive. So there's a new track. Let's see what happens.
Thank you, Saiket. You cued me into the first question, which is, in general, do you consider, Vinka and Saiket, do you guys consider that this was a good starting point? What's your overall take? Vinka, over to you, and then Saiket again.
I think we definitely gotta have to start somewhere. So, I would say that this is a good starting point, but over the years, I feel like it needs to be improved. Like, for example, COP28 this year, it is, I think for me, there's a lot of people, it's my third COP, and I still feel very much overwhelmed about, like, how, like, the 2 weeks it was just meetings, and then following different negotiations. So I think it would be great if there has to be, like, capacity building for people, especially if this is their first COP. How can they maximize their participation, and not just, like, roaming around at COP? Because I think, like, this COP specifically, like, this is the first time where I've seen the green zone is definitely much bigger than the blue zone, which is, I think, like, what's the point of that? And they have free taxi in green zone, so I don't really understand, like, what are they trying to achieve here. But yeah, definitely need to start somewhere, and I feel like government needs to understand the fact that, like, all of this government bodies, or like the UN, they say that, oh, we consulted young people, but at the same time, you also need to listen to young people when you don't have the platform to consult them. It's not how it works. It's not just like, oh, we provide the platform to consult young people, but when young people have demands outside that platform, that needs to be heard as well. And I like the fact that we had Youth Day during this COP, but I guess at the same time, a lot of young people at this COP, they had observer badges, and they're not allowed to go into negotiating rooms. So I guess, like, next COP, like, how can we participate them into becoming more involved if they want to involve in negotiations? And I had Party Overflow badge from Australia, so I was allowed to go into the negotiating rooms, but the line to go into negotiating rooms was quite long, and then when I enter, it's quite empty. So, like, for what I've heard, like, some Party Overflow, like, most of them are like private sectors, and they don't really want to follow any negotiation. They just want to be here to present what they've been doing over the years. So definitely facilitate young people's participation when it comes to negotiation, and not have young people there to just kind of transfer their stories for decision makers to make a decision, but also include them in the, like, negotiating table.
Thank you,
Yes.
Saiket.
Yeah. So yes, a lot of things has changed since not last COP, I will say, from COP26 basically. So first of all, when I was in COP26, youth was considered as a part, but not as an integral part. We did the conference of youth at that time, including the GST global, sorry, not the GSTs, GIS, the Global Youth Statement, where we put forward a lot of ALCOIs, which is the regional and local conference of youths. We gathered a lot of demands from all of the youths all over the globe, and we condensed it all together, and we put forward to the COP presidency during the COP. In the next year, in COP27, there was the first time that we had the pavilion for youth and children pavilion dedicated to us, and that time all of the presidencies and the major bodies was talking about the youth statement, what exactly it is, because at that point we really get the renounced negotiations that what exactly it is and what are the demands that we demanded. And this year we literally put forward prior to the COP to the presidency and during the presidencies, and everyone shouted on how it was made, and like it was a ground of applause for everyone whoever worked in the same space. So yes, certainly we are getting to the part, but as Vinka said, really I have seen 50% of the youth who just don't know what to do. They want to contribute in COP28. They want to be a part of integral negotiations or demands. They have a lot of energy, plus they have a lot of ideas, really, in terms of technology or in terms of policies, but they don't know where to put it through. We tried a lot to get a proper bottleneck so that everyone can go and see the negotiations. We provided like tickets, day tickets, and particular negotiation tickets to everyone whoever wants to go, but it was not enough. Basically, there are a lot of so take an example. There was more than 2,000 lobbyists for oil and gas, right? And they were all the time capacitate the whole arena, but the people who really wants to be there and wants to know exactly, like, because youth is the answer to the next generational problem solutions, right? So we need to be there because we are most vulnerable, and we have all the technological transfer and skill needed for the future, but we are not given the proper platforms. So I think that's the most crucial part where everything has to be recognized. And if you speak about what has been agreed and what has not been agreed, every agreed text has a loophole, like literal loophole, like transition from phase out to phase down, then transition away. There is no logical, like, short targets. There is a long target, but what about the short target? Because of the short target, there is a lot of loopholes in the supply chain, in policies, in differentiate countries like the global south and the global north. Those are not similar, right? We have to also look after the transition, look after the ecological balance and equitable, secure, and environmental factors. So I think yeah, I'm agree with Vinka about that.
Thank you. Again, a little question on that same matter is, how can youth inclusion and participation from indigenous and hard to reach communities be promoted? When you were saying there's a difference between the global north and the global south, this question is addressing exactly those needs and how we can reach to those communities that are very hard to reach. And what's your take on that in general?
Sure. There's a lot of mechanism, but the thing is, we have to know that there is solution called practical, and there is also solution called theoretical. So all we things that we learn all over the internet, and everyone says everything, those are theoretical things. But in practical manner, we have to engage with them on grounds. First of all, we have to also know their culture, the roots from where they're coming from, and why they have been implemented into the most affected people. What has been affecting them? Is the agricultural demand? Is the deforestations? Is the is a lot of companies, public companies who are doing exploration, oil explorations, gas flaring? What exactly they are facing towards climate change? Then we have to look after what exactly the gap between their knowledge, awareness, and also in financial conditions. If someone is there who can't eat for the whole day because he doesn't have any money, can I go to him and speak about climate change? No. At that time, I have to give him food, and then I have to give him a shelter. Then I'll say, okay, we helped each other. Now we have to help the other communities, right? So everything starts from the grassroots level, according to me. So I think there's a study that 70% of the biodiversity is been affected and maintained by the local community of the forest. So there is a lot of policies which is going on. For example, there is a just a second. It was in Japan. It's called the Indigenous Forest Dweller Policy, which is the Nagoya Protocol. So that was in Japan, when advocates the fair and equitable compensation of communities providing biological resources and knowledge. So whatever we take from them, we give back something to them. So that was a policy which was implemented. And I feel it a really good policy of implementing youth also, and also the community towards climate change. And second factor is the ACE. ACE means Action for Climate Empowerment. So Action for Climate Empowerment have 6 very vital elements like education, awareness, moving towards the whole generation X. Like you have to know using internet, you have to know using the new era of beginning. So also you have to also understand that many people don't understand internet, so you have to make some booths, like public booths, to make them aware like what is going on. So technological transfer, and of course the government scheme, very crucial, the schemes which directly goes to the indigenous and local communities. So those are the crucial factor, I think, which will emphasize the whole transformation towards justified net zero aspect.
Thank you so much. Vinka, do you have a take on that question?
Yeah, just very briefly, I definitely agree with what Saikat said. You can't really how to engage them. For example, if they don't know what to eat for tomorrow, they don't have the capacity in their brain to understand, just grasp what climate change is. And when I was a kid, I also don't know what climate change is. I know global warming, but I don't know like what is 1.5C. And I feel like the issue of 1.5C is a bigger issue than like, you need to communicate that strategically to so different people, they have different understanding, so you can't really communicate in your language to tell like what is climate change. But I think what I see here is like definitely a twofold approach, like that can be taken by young people as well in the space, but also with government. Like at COP, like I think we all went to COP, that we need to acknowledge that we had that privilege, to start with. Like we have the visa, we have the means, we have the fun to travel to COP, and then like we can take days off to go to COP. So that's one. And you need to understand that you go to COP not just on behalf of yourself, but you represent a lot of like different communities. Like for me, I represent migrant communities. The migrant community is just more than just like climate migration. There's also like environmental displacement. There's also like crisis where people have to move, and I've never had that experience to start with. So definitely need a lot of like consult this marginalized communities beforehand. But also with government, I think government need to understand that this grassroots communities or young organization, they don't really have a lot of like support from the government. So like, we have to fund our participation to COP by ourselves, and maybe try to, because now we see the trend with like migration issues or youth engagement specifically. We see a trend of government prioritizing consultation on individuals. So maybe you're recognizing the efforts of groups like Younger, like MyCP or other grassroots or youth organizations that facilitate this diverse participation of young people and their point of views. And I guess my last point would probably just be, avoid the tokenism and, government consulting on people, or like, when it comes to indigenous community, for example, and establish an actual partnership. So involve them in the initial stages of planning, not just when there's an issue, then you have to consult them.
Thank you, Inka. Thanks so much. We have no more time. I honestly have like 4 or 5 more questions that I would very much enjoy to ask. I can see that in the chat there are some other questions. I understand there's going to be a question and answer in the very end, but if not, please connect. We want to keep this conversation going, and thank you so much. We have to move on to the next panel. Again, thank you so much, and see you later.
No problem. Thank you.
So moving on to the next panel, it's not youth anymore. We are going to talk about agriculture and biodiversity. Just quick on talking about what we're addressing here, the size of the problem that we're addressing in COP. Food systems are very vulnerable to climate change, causing our current food systems cause 30% of the greenhouse gases, 80% of deforestation in the world, and they use up to 70% of our fresh water. Agriculture has lost 21% of its productivity due to climate change, and on top of that, food systems aren't currently feeding everyone in reality. So this is a great problem that we have to talk about in order to meet the goals in the Paris Agreement. And on the same note, the facts are pretty straightforward. Nature plays a key role in every aspect of the Paris Agreement. Right now, the biggest carbon sink we have by far is nature, taking over 50% of human-made emissions. And nature has the potential to help us remove 30% of the carbon we need to get rid of by 2030. So this is last but not least by far. Jingxiao were there at COP, specifically on December 9 and 10, which were the days that they addressed these two topics. Pedro is the head of the Environment and Institutional Affairs of the State Secretariat of Agriculture, Livestock, and Food Supply of Minas Gerais in Brazil. Please correct me if I did not well pronounce that in Portuguese. And Jing Xiao is a climate tech and entrepreneur and a delegate for China's Biodiversity Conservation and Green Development Foundation. Thank you both for being here. Again, over to you. We have a bunch of questions and very little time. I'm going to try to rush into them, but please tell us more about you and especially more about how COP went, which is our main topic here. Pedro, you can start.
Okay, thank you. So it's good to join this panel. I was honored with the invitation that I have found from Aurora here when we are at COP28 and after all meeting. And I'm from State Secretariat from Minas Gerais. We talk about agriculture. We are a subnational state and we are bigger than France in size. Brazil is a continental country, so we have so many biomes and so have difference and cultural difference between all of them. And Minas Gerais is mainly an agriculture and mining state. We mainly export commodities. So we all know about the problems about mining and how they are not sustainable at all because of the impact of the nature. So we mainly rely on our agriculture. So like some data, important data here, at Minas Gerais we have like 1 million properties that are registered in our forest code. We have the rural environment register that they register all the properties that we have. They have to do it all along the country. So Minas Gerais we have above 1 million, and 92% of them are small producers or familiar agricultures. So we have a special category there in Brazil to emphasize that kind of production. They have, small credit taxes and something like this. We went mainly to COP. That was my second COP. I was there in Sharm el Sheikh at COP27. We went mainly to COP to promote our traceability system, to show what we want to show there at like Minas Gerais main goal. We want to show that our production is deforestation free since 2008. We mapped alongside some cultures like coffee, soy, and forestry, planted trees. So our results are incredible. We did we developed this system in cloud that's called Selo Verde with the Federal University of Minas Gerais, our biggest public university there in Minas Gerais. They are mainly for postdoctors and PhDs, and they are they have in high account in the international scientific community. So it's online, it's free, it's public, and all our producers can access it only with the identifier numbers. So they can have a deforestation-free certificate that shows that they have no deforestation since 2008. So they comply with our forest codes. Our forest code there in Brazil is one of the tightest vegetation legislations around the world. It's much more harder than the UDR, for example. So we see there's a lot of misinformation and some fake news about what we do in Brazil. So we need to comply with the science. We need to comply with public systems, public information to show what we're really doing and how we can support, how can we finance our producers, because we are suffering a lot from extreme climate events. Like you see in the north portion of our states, there we're having a severe, we have no rain. It's about 30% of what should have rained this year, and they are suffering a lot. They lost a lot of crops, and we have to take some emergency measures or something like this. So mainly we are there to show what we're doing, that we will comply with the deforestation free and the plans we have, and to give some finance, some funds, some beneficial environments, green funds, to can our producers can assess, and they can remain in the field, remain in the countryside, they can remain producing and not going to poverty. That's I think that's the main. It's a nice. I resume or something like this. Thank you.
It's incredible. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's actually one of the questions, so thank you for addressing it right now. So one of the questions, Pedro, I think addresses Brazil's and especially Minas Gerais. Let me see. One of the excerpts of COP28 joint statement on climate, nature, and people is that scaling of finance and investment for climate and nature. How can indigenous people and local communities who are key stakeholders in agricultural practices be positioned rightly in order to attract finance for their agricultural businesses?
Thank you, Emmanuel, for the question. So we're talking about a really big subnational state, a really big province. So we have our indigenous lands there are already, demarcated. We don't have a lot of trouble of, some invasions and something that we mainly see the things in Amazon or Pará or the other Amazon, legal Amazon rainforest states. So we are in a different place. We are in the southwest portion of Brazil. So when we address this, we have a lot of public infrastructure, public policies that address directly the indigenous and the traditional communities and people that we have there in Minas Gerais. We have, for example, our embrace for the technical assistance and rural extension. It's the EMATER. I'm the president of the fiscal council of this public company. So they mainly do the technicals. They address and they assist for free or subventioned the governments. They pay for it to assist this traditional people, to assist the small producers, to help them to develop their crops, to be environmentally and working labor according to the laws. We enforce this in Minas Gerais to have this strong public actuation. And we always say, and when we talk about the climate disparity about the north countries and the south, the global south, we say that we really need money. All the money that they promised and the funds that 100 billion since 2020, and we see a change of speaking, the subject of speaking. They change the fossil fuels protagonist to deforestation. It's about deforestation. We have to stop deforestation, yes, but we have to agree that the national laws, they are above all of them. We don't agree about what the UDR or the other carbon taxes like we spoke in the other panels, and that will be mainly they will be against all of the policies we have been developing the forest codes from 10 years to now. So we try to address public resources mainly in these communities, and we try to do this because of the infrastructure of the difficulty of these people to develop some enterprises to deal with something. We have listened about carbon credit washing and something like this with the indigenous territories. Some not so cool companies go there and buy for really cheap, and the indigenous they sign the contracts, and then we have to go to the laws to make this thing don't work or don't be there. It's a big mess. So we are trying to endorse the public system to support them, but for that we need money. We need finance. We need international finance, and looking at the real that's our payments currency. So it's about like we worth 1 real by 5 real by $1. So when we get international money, it's real money. Even if it's slightest little, it's a money that we can achieve to employ in public policies and address to this climate. So I think that's the way when we work there in Minas Gerais, when we look to it.
Understood. Thank you very much. Jingxiao, let's try it again. I'm going to ask you the question also, and maybe you can answer
better
the.
now?
Let me see.
Is it better now? No.
Yeah, it's way better. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask you the question. I'm going to go directly to how can biodiversity data be promoted and used in the conservation and management of our nature-based resources? So if you can talk a little bit about what you're doing, and then you can jump into the question. If you forget the question, just ask me again. I'll hit it again.
Yeah. What I have been doing actually, on my job, I've been in the carbon markets also, and we do have a lot of nature-based solution project, and we take care of the biodiversity things. And regarding what I have been representing the China Biodiversity Conservation and Green Development Foundation. I have been helping them to promote their initiative, which is biodiversity conservation on in our neighborhood. I'm not sure if you have heard of if you got this, because probably the sound was not loud, but so basically the initiative is to promote the biodiversity conservation, this concept out of the protected zone, but everywhere in our society, in the city, among the individuals. And regarding the questions, is the biodiversity database, right? From my perspective, this is a very good question, but also a difficult question to answer, because biodiversity is not like carbon, which is a almost single factor, which is easy to quantify, or you can archive it. You can quantify it, and also you can archive the information in the database. But biodiversity is not the same thing. Until now, even in the scientific world, the scientists, they even don't have a final agreement on what the biodiversity is. So biodiversity, we can monitor it through factors, through indicators like the birds or the number of the species, but they are not necessarily representing what biodiversity is. So that's why I say it's a difficult question to answer, like how
Yes,
and
I
how to
understand.
utilize biodiversity database. Yeah, because there is of course some database that is in trial in a global level, UN level, and also there are NGOs who are trying to do some biodiversity database, but it is still difficult to leverage database on the conservation project. But of course, for example, there are
if I change a little bit of the question, is how, I mean, what has to be done so that that data can help us solve biodiversity problems?
I won't say data, probably information or the research, what the research has been done. For example, Nature, there was a paper on Nature, the published the place where scientists published their paper, the Nature magazine or the publications. There was a paper called, cannot remember the exact name, but it identified 30 biodiversity hotspots around the world, which means is in these 30 large areas, the biodiversity is super rich, which provides high ecological value to the whole world. And this kind of paper, of course, it is very essential for conservation project, where the conservation project should take place. This kind of paper, I think, is information, but does not necessarily count as a database. And for example, there are other monitoring, or let's say watch. For example, the global mangrove watch or global monitoring aliens, something like that. They do identify the key places where we need to conserve the mangrove or the wetland. The two ecosystem, wetland and mangrove forest, are very important to protect the biodiversity.
Understood. Thank you so much. We have a time constraint. I'm going to ask a final question, which I would like you to conclude your participation with this, and it is, what is or would have been your dream agreement to be made at COP? So, in other words, what should society demand our representatives to strive for in the following COPs, especially talking about Azerbaijan or even Brazil? That's what we want to hear.
Maybe I can start.
Yeah, you can start.
The topic of biodiversity. I think for me there are 2 points. The first, already this time at COP28, it's already partially achieved, because at this time we have a joint statement on climate, nature, and conservation, biodiversity conservation, which is passed and published. This statement underline the importance of biodiversity, which is equally important as the climate change issues. So when we are looking at the climate change, not only the carbon but also biodiversity. The carbon and biodiversity should be treated equally. They're all very important. But until now, the most finance and the attention is only on carbon, not only in the markets, but also in the policy level. But this statement says that we have to pay attention to biodiversity as same as the carbon. Well, this is good news, but there are only 18 countries who signed the statement. So maybe for next year, I will hope there are more countries who will join this statement, who will agree with this statement to take actions on biodiversity conservation, but not only on climate change. But because the two topics are the same one, it's not separate. The ecosystem climate change is one problem. It's not a separate problem. Okay, that's from my side.
Completely understood. Thank you. Pedro, what's your take?
Thank you. Yeah, I think that looking to this COP, I was not very insightful. I was not very cheerful because of in the great second COP between the fossil fuel lobbyists and something like this. But just to see the word transition away from fossil fuels, I think it was a great victory. We produced there in Brazil some sustainable fuels from sugarcane that we call ethanol or alcohol, some kind of alcohol. And to see in this kind of production there in Brazil, because of our forest codes, we have two types of mandatory preservation areas in the countryside properties: the preservation permanent areas, because a river, alongside, top of mountains and something like this, and the legal reserve. That's generally in Minas Gerais, 20% of the native vegetation of the property has to be preserved. Otherwise, they can operate, the production can operate. So we want, for our dreams, more adaptation financial funds, because I think we need to adaptate when we look to the global south countries, and we rely mainly on climate things, because we export many commodities. So we maybe foresee the increase of poverty and something like this, because the people can produce, so it will be hard to produce. They can evade the countryside and go to the cities. It will be a social disturbance too. So I think we need to see more funds, more direct funding, not on finance that we have to repay for, but funds and subventions that we can use to transition away from our fossil fuels and to transition away to low carbon technologies for agriculture and something like this. There in Brazil, we do things, we have science, we have big public policies that go to transition away. We have some climate action plans for the state to have there in Minas Gerais too, made in 2022. So what we need is money, right? We need to be trusted to our systems, to our development, our technologies to be trusted and be funded to transition away from a cleaner, a carbon-free economy. That's it.
Very clear. Thank you very much. I guess we've reached the end of our panels. I thank you again, Pedro and Jing Xiao for this panel in particular, and every other one here in. And I hand it over to Aurora. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah, really appreciate all excellent sharing and perspectives from all our delegates. Also appreciate efforts of our moderators. So for sure, COP28 has brought all of us who are concerned about climate change and want to make a difference together and provided an opportunity to discuss. Climate change concerns all of us, and change is a gradual process that can only be discussed and negotiated as we move forward together. And I hope that today's panel has helped you understand better COP28 and climate change. And now maybe all of you, I hope all of you can join us and keep in touch and discuss. Yeah.